The first round of the playoffs is now finished, meaning we have gone from 16 players down to just 8. This round was least cash normal Phayze on the map Luminous Cove with Geraldo, Brickell and the Beast Handler banned and maximum 10 subs, 5 boats and 2 ice monkeys. Let's take a look at each and every 1v1 starting from the top of the bracket, Animal versus Toast. Toast didn't submit, so Animal wins by default. There was actually quite a few players in this round who didn't submit. We'll look at Animal's 195k run in a fair bit of detail and then less detail for the rest of the runs because a lot of people use the same basic strat but with small variations to save more cash. He has chosen Churchill as his hero, and that tower will also be a major damage dealer for the first 2 tiers, along with a Dartling Gunner that will eventually be worked into a Mad. He also got a discount village with jungle drums, an ice monkey and a Chinook, and this takes down tier 1 quite comfortably. By tier 2 the setup hasn't changed much, he's added an overclock and towards the end of the kill he Chinooks his 2 damage dealers closer to the boss to take it out very close to the exit. Letting the boss get this close to the exit is a very risky thing to do with Phayze, because the boss occasionally pulls bloons to its location and that often leads to an instant death when it's this close to the end of the track, but Animal makes it work. For tier 3 the Dartling has been upgraded to the Mad and he's added another ice monkey on the top left area so he can start the boss fight with the Mad being able to attack the boss and then Chinook the Mad down later on. This map has 3 different height levels. First off the bottom level with a big water area, then the middle level with 2 smaller water areas, and then finally the 2 topmost water areas. So if you have the Mad at a level lower than where the boss is, it won't be able to attack it. There is an exception to that though, because the hitbox of the boss is quite large, so when the boss is in some specific parts along the track you can still get some damage in on the boss even if it's on a higher level, something that a few other players will use to their advantage. For tier 4 he's upgraded the overclock to ultra boost and added a second heli which is a Moab shove that will serve to stall the rounds. Phayze pulls bloons, including Moab class bloons, to his location, which makes stalling a lot harder on this boss, but it can still be done using this tower because even when a Moab is being pulled, the shove effect still works and can give you a nice long stall. For the final tier, nothing has changed, so this tier is all about stalling the rounds and moving the Mad to always be able to damage the boss and also make sure it's always as close to the boss as possible so that when you use the ability you hit all of your missiles, because even with the increased accuracy crosspath, the ability missiles do get very spread out over long distances. He sold his hero mid-fight to make sure that Churchill doesn't end his stall, and Animal was able to stall round 120 for the entire duration of the kill by making sure that the heli was attacking the boss rather than the Moab that it was stalling. With this strat he was able to take out the boss near the end of the track, but compared to some other runs that we will see, this was actually relatively safe in terms of how close it got to the exit. For the next matchup we have Pick and Shot versus Daragon, neither of which submitted a run. This is not something I expected to happen. This means that neither of them will move on to the next round and thus Animal won't be facing off against anyone in the next round. This is unfortunate because that means that Animal won't need to put up a good score for the next round. Maybe he still will if he feels like it, but that could also mean that we will all be missing out on seeing yet another cool run from Animal. Anyway, the next matchup is between Mayo and Felicia, where Felicia took the win by a big margin. Mayo used a Plasma Monkey fan club setup with a P-Brew, Call to Arms, Glue Strike, and an Esprit with Isili as his hero, getting a score of 236k. Felicia also used the Mad plus Stall strat, but cut the 195k score that Animal had down to 187k, and this was done by skipping out on the Chinook as well as the 2 Ice Monkeys and then adding a tier 4 Alk. Felicia didn't do as good of a job when it came to the stalling, however, so there was a lot of regular rounds to deal with during the course of the fight, but Churchill was 10x ultra boosted as well, so that ended up working out just fine, taking out the boss with a little bit of track length to spare. Next matchup was Nudsimisi versus Sarut, and surprisingly, Sarut did not submit a game either. I don't know the reason why, very unfortunate. I was really hoping to see this guy compete because he had a real chance of making it very far. Nadsimisi also used the Mad Stall strat and got a score of 186k, so slightly better than the score we just watched, and he also skipped out on the Chinook and placed his Mad on the rightmost second height level water puddle. He also chose to skip out on the Ultra Boost in favor of an Overclock plus Homeland and the Tier 4 Alk, and the final most interesting change was that he added a Tier 3 Desperado to buff the Mad. Not the range of course, but the less used increased accuracy effect that will reduce the spread of the missiles on the ability. Very smart, well done. Next up is Pytrek vs Sonaki, where Pytrek took home the win with the best score we've seen so far of 173k. He used the same strat as we've seen before, but he didn't need to add anything over the basic towers needed for the strat. No Alk, no Ice, no Chinook, no Desperado, nothing more than the bare bones of the strategy. Very well done, cut things very close in the end, overall a beautiful run. Sonaki got a score of 254k, but to his credit, he did also figure out the basics of the strats, but he didn't realize the stalling part of the strategy, and because of that, he needed to add a lot more defense to compensate for that to not die to the regular rounds, but nevertheless, well done on finding the strat. Next up is Laser Lizard vs ISAB, where ISAB took home a decisive win with a 100k difference. Laser Lizard got a score of 285k using the Mad and Flying Fortress as the damage dealers, and then an Ultra Boost, Alk and Jungle Drums to buff them, and finally Ben and a Bank for farming. ISAB used the same strat that we've seen before, getting a score of 182k, also opting for the Homeland Overclock combo rather than the Ultra Boost, and he also chose Isili as his hero for the buff to the Mad. He also got a Glue Strike, which might be confusing, but the reason he needed to add that was because on Tier 2 he had less DPS than the other players because of having Isili rather than Churchill. So adding a Glue Strike will help out the Tier 4 Dartling enough for him to take down that tier, and it also helped out with the regular rounds as well. Very nice game, permastalled round 121 and took out the boss very close to the exit. Now, in the next matchup, we have the best score out of everyone. Mr. $sign versus Lendoli, with Lendoli getting a score of 141k, absolutely putting everyone else to shame, and Mr. $sign not even submitting anything. This run was so impressive. He also chose to skip out on the Ultra Boost, but instead of replacing it with an Overclock plus the very expensive Homeland, he went for Overclock plus Call to Arms, Alchemist and Desperado for the increased accuracy. Lendoli came in 32k under the second best score, which was by Mr. Pytrek, who already optimized the strats down to the very bare bones. This is an insane cash save to have over second place. If you recall, I had a hard time picking the winner of this matchup in my predictions of the last tournament video, and ultimately I went for his opponent who didn't even submit a run, and then this guy pulls off the craziest run out of everyone. Absolutely insane. This was not on my bingo card at all. Seeing this score for the first time on the bracket really made my eyes pop wide open. Well done, dude. And for the final matchup, we have me versus Yandolf, and after hours and hours of Yandolf begging me to throw my run so he could advance in the tournament, I decided to go for a ninja setup, getting a score of 238k. In reality, I didn't find the right strat because I didn't have enough game knowledge. I was unaware that Moabs being pulled by Phayze could be permastalled with a heli, so any strat of that kind was outside of my scope. So the strat I defaulted to was the only strat that I knew about, the only strat that I've ever used before for least cash Phayze, but I was very confident that I was missing out on the top strat, but I just couldn't figure out what it was. Yandalf went for the same mad strat that we've seen before, and he got 3rd place overall, so even if I had figured out the strat, I probably would have lost to him anyway because he had it optimized pretty well. He also went very bare bones with his run. The only thing that he needed to add compared to Pytrek in 2nd place was the Ice Monkey to be able to place the mad in a more elevated location, but other than that it's the exact same setup, getting a score of 176k. So before we take a look at the bracket, here are all of the scores for this round. Very unfortunate to see so many people not submit a run, especially Sarut and Daragon, who has done very well in the tournament so far. Would have been awesome to see how they would have held up. Anyway, a lot of people ended up finding the best strat, with Yandalf and Pytrek optimizing a lot further than most, and with Lendoli perfecting it to the max. So the bracket now looks like this, and I'm gonna compare it a bit against my predictions. Animal moving on as expected and will now be guaranteed to end up in the semifinals. Felicia moved on as expected. Nudsimisi moved on versus Sarut against my expectations, but he did manage to get a very good score. He found the right strat, so despite Sarut not submitting, Nudsimisi still very deserved advancement in the tournament in my opinion. Pytrek moved on as expected. Isab moved on as expected. I had a bet against Lendoli, but this was a very hard bet. It felt like a 50-50, so I'm not very surprised at all that he won. And finally, Yandalf moved on also as expected. What the next challenge is gonna be is yet to be announced, but my guess is least tiers and then timed for the last 2. That's what I based my predictions on, but I have no clue if that's gonna be the case. And a final note I just want to throw in this video: early access videos of update 50 dropped yesterday, but I didn't make one in time because we got access to the build very late and I have a very erratic sleeping schedule that didn't match up at all. Other YouTubers have already made videos covering the hero overall, so I was thinking about maybe making a late early access video exploring the potential uses of the hero for bossing and free play, but sadly there doesn't seem to be any. Maybe for some water only challenges, but other than that it seems to be mostly a chimps and race hero, so I'm probably not gonna make an early access video for this update. But the update is gonna drop soon, so then there's gonna be a ton of fun videos diving into all of the interesting balance changes. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.